We're back, Wolves fans, with another GTA Fancast. It's me, Gully, on the Wolves Fancast YouTube channel. We're back with a win as well, a positive result, a positive performance to look at as well. Some not so positive things from a defensive perspective, but I think we can all be pleased with the 6 points that we took off Leeds this season. And contrary to popular belief, I'm going to show you that Leeds weren't necessarily the dominant force that everyone will have you believe in this game. So it seems we've come into a decent spell of form, and I think from my perspective this was the first game where I'd really felt like we were back on track, especially over a 90 minutes. I think there was probably a 20-25 minute spell in that Southampton game where we won. It was a good result, where we were genuinely the better team. I think I wouldn't necessarily suggest over the whole game we outplayed Southampton and we were totally deserving of the 3 points on that occasion. But we had a good spell in the game, we took our chances, and then we saw the game out. On this occasion, I think for the first hour we were probably the better side, created more kind of openings from open play, and we were the more kind of, I'd like to think that we probably put our plan together a little bit better than Leeds did in terms of actually on the pitch and the results of that. Now, for a start, I think we were just a little bit more intense. We were pressing higher, and just a couple of examples as I go through that show you that level of improvement in that area. I think we saw in the Southampton game that how important it is that we are starting to press a little bit higher, so we can get those three forwards on the ball in decent positions of the pitch. And we saw again that real freedom of movement with Neto and Traore. I think it wasn't necessarily just the case on this occasion that they were switched over. They both popped up in many different areas on the pitch and were able to go out and just exploit what system Leeds were playing, which is generally speaking a man-to-man system. So if you are looking to try and kind of drag players out of shape, that's the way to go about it. And there are plenty of touches in the first half, especially all over the pitch. Now, I want to pick up on a couple of things. For a start, just a little bit more confidence in the way that we played. If I show you just a clip here where we see Dendoncker getting on the ball in quite a potentially risky part of the pitch, not necessarily loads of safe passing options on, but he still has the confidence to go out and play this ball into a midfield area. Quite a few easier options, maybe safer options, but he doesn't take them, and the subsequent risk that he takes leads to us getting into a decent position higher up the pitch and getting a shot away at goal. Now, that wasn't something that would have happened probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, just based on that confidence, that fragility that the team just carried with them wherever they went. And it was nice to see. There was an easy option on just to lay it back to Cody, and he played the ball forward, but decided not to do that. Play into those kind of technically gifted midfielders in there who are able to play in tight spaces. And Leeds obviously are a team who will suffocate you all over the pitch with the way they really harass teams out of possession. But it was just a good sign to see that we are playing with a little bit more risk and trying to, embed this more positive style, I think, which is really necessary for a start. We've got some really talented players in forward areas. Another couple of things that was really good to see, like I say, pressing higher, winning the ball higher up the pitch, then getting the ball into the likes of Neto, Traore and Jose. And I think Jose benefited a hell of a lot more from having Neto and Traore in much closer proximity to him. We had a lot of attempts on goal in that first half, plenty of them from kind of distance, and I think while we did quite well up to a point, there's another step in the dance to come in terms of that final third, and you see that we're picking up the ball in areas where there's plenty of options around us. There's not necessarily too much pressure on us, but the inclination is still to go out and have a shot at goal rather than combine with players around each other. I think there's two strands to that really, which is Nuno doesn't want to give up possession to a team for a start who are good in transition themselves, who will spring onto you, and we saw as an example with the Bamford disallowed goal that they can really, if you give the ball away, take advantage of that. But also just the fact that we don't necessarily have a pattern of play in the final third of the pitch which allows us to do that. We're not necessarily making those runs, and kind of if we take it to the ball, we picked up the ball in this kind of area quite a bit, in behind the midfield as well. So it wasn't as if we were dealing with a massive pack defence. That part of the pitch was quite vacant, and we had opportunities to play a little bit more. The only time it really happened where we got into a decent position in the penalty box was when Semedo ran through a couple of times, and on the first occasion it was definitely a moment of transition, and he was bombing on outside Pedro Neto. Showed the importance of the wing backs, that when they are up in support and they're making those runs, they give you that extra option. Otherwise Neto could be potentially in a bit of a pickle where he's got a couple of men to try and beat, and it just makes his life a lot harder. But that transition is the time where we look to take advantage by throwing a couple of men forward. When the team isn't winning the ball in the transition and able to get the guys up into high spaces with runners going past them, we don't tend to commit men really. When the defence is set and when we're not able to make late runs, then it's just like the onus is then on Neto, as an example, just having to go from distance rather than playing it into Jose, making runs in beyond that flat back four. And I think that's where we can do a little bit more and work a little bit harder to try and create more chances that we're likely to take, because as much as it was nice to see, and we saw it on the goal as well, the situation that Traoré was in before he struck at goal wasn't really a favourable one. Leeds had closed the space quite well. They'd shown him onto his right foot, which, as I've spoken about before, is his heavy bias. But really, there's only one thing on for him, and that was to take the shot. Fortunately, it worked out for us. But there wasn't any offering a wall pass or a 1-2, or anybody offering a run in behind, and they could close out that option. And to be fair to Leeds, they defended that situation pretty well, given the fact that Traoré is such a danger when he's got the ball at his feet. But moment of magic, well earned kind of look in terms of the real thunderbolt of the strike, and he deserves almost that look that he earned off the back of it. But we can do a little bit more in the final third to create better opportunities for the likes of Jose, Neto, Traoré, and maybe just give ourselves a bit more of a chance to get into the lead in the game, because ultimately the XG on that strike wouldn't have been very, very high. Just to point out that we're not necessarily creating loads of good chances, but still a much more positive first half.
So from the good to the slightly negative, and as previously mentioned, we didn't really get opened up too often by Leeds, to be totally honest, but where they did manage to get some joy was offset pieces. And I just want to delve a little bit deeper into the way we're defending them at the moment. Now, first point to make is it's dangerous to assume that every single set piece is defendable. Obviously, in football, you will have to compromise on something, concede in a certain area of the pitch. In any given situation, you can't necessarily repel absolutely everything. And it sounds stupid to say, but the defence is on the back foot immediately just because the set piece taker isn't looking to find their head. And it's worth understanding that when you think about the way teams have to set up in this kind of scenario. So if you have a look at the first Leeds chance that they created, you can see here we're set quite narrow. We have plenty of bodies in there. And Nuno's spoken previously about the fact that Willy Bolly isn't available to us, and we do suffer really from that perspective. And we actually were missing our two most potent headers of the ball in terms of aerial duels, one in him and Max Kilman on this occasion. So when it comes to set pieces, you're always going to come up against some kind of scenario from this kind of dead ball situation. And for a start, Rafinha's delivery was incredible, to be brutally honest, on this occasion. But like I say, there's always something maybe that you can do differently. As I said, we've sat quite narrow here. We're defending the width of the posts basically, and Nuno is quite clear in this kind of setup that he's not necessarily worried about the first contact being out wide, but he's got weight of numbers to kind of mitigate the fact that we haven't got a single aerially dominant footballer on that in that situation. You know, Dendoncker, Cody, Sace, they're not really head it and kick it kind of defenders. So bodies and kind of defence by numbers is the way to go about it. And ultimately, first contact is the most important thing in this scenario, whether you're picking up men or not. You know, tracking a man makes no difference if you manage to head the ball and as a result just negate the effect of the set piece anyway. So, as mentioned, we're keeping a relatively high line, but what we've found is that we're not really holding it. And on these occasions, Liam Cooper seemed to get away and get a run because we didn't necessarily hold a strict enough line. You can see here, Rafinha's not actually that close to taking the set piece, but people are starting to drop. It's not a quite horizontal line that you'd like to see. Patricio is actually holding quite a high position compared to the way he normally would play, which is interesting. So we're giving him the space to come and operate and come and claim the ball. But like I say, the set piece delivery on this occasion was far too good for him to come anywhere near it, and we just ended up dealing with the header that was on target. But I think, you know, if you're going to play like this, it's much more important to ensure you hold a strict line and use VAR to your advantage. I think we've seen with other teams that, you know, and I've got an example of it here with Fulham, the way they defended a set piece against Everton, where they hold a high line and they really stick to it, because ultimately, if there is, you know, a header that gets on target or they score a goal from it, VAR is definitely your friend with regards to the defence on this occasion. We've seen the minute detail with the disallowed goal by Bamford that VAR goes into to, you know, actually call out an offside. And your natural inclination as a defender, as a good defender anyway, is always to kind of drop off and deal with it. You know, any defender that would prefer to hold a line and play offside is in my own personal opinion, quite a lazy defender. But, you know, you have to kind of resist that temptation. I think we've seen it with Harry Maguire. He's much more comfortable addressing the ball than holding the line, and he's fallen foul of it a couple of times recently where he hasn't been able to get his head on the ball as an aerially dominant defender, and he's cost his team by not holding that offside line, and someone from the opposition getting in and scoring a goal as a result. So really important to be disciplined from that perspective, because like I say, the VAR is on your side. You know, even if it's a toe that's offside of the offending player, they're going to be offside. Use it to your advantage. It's a bit of a risk naturally, but you know, the chances are over-eager forwards, especially centre halves in this kind of scenario, who aren't necessarily used to timing their runs in beyond a defence, you know, are liable to be offside in this kind of situation. So we need to be sure that, you know, we're making our drop once the ball's kicked rather than prior to it being kicked, and something we can learn from for sure.
So to summarise, I think there is kind of another step in the dance with regards to our attacking play that means we need to combine a little bit more. It was much better in this game. Willian Jose was on the ball a lot more, and he's effective at keeping it. He's a good foil for anybody to play around him. But I think there's something more that we can do to prevent us just becoming long range merchants. And I think this kind of plays into that Nuno safety first mentality, where if you can win a game by scoring from 30 yards, not conceding anything defensively, which was kind of proven by the fact that the one time we were opened up, it was from us losing the ball in a really high position, and Bamford then obviously being flagged narrowly offside. But that was still a dangerous situation where our midfield was bypassed, especially when we're considering that our midfield is looking to press a lot higher in situations now. That, you know, there's sound logic to Nuno's way, in the sense that if we are committing men forward, adding extra options to pass to, you know, we are liable to be broken on quite easily. We haven't got a dynamic midfield, we haven't got a dynamic defence to recover those situations in those one-on-ones. So maybe that's where, again, we circle back to the recruitment, and hopefully next season a mobile centre-half is a priority. I think Willy Bolly being absent as well plays into that kind of situation, and getting a bit more of an aerially dominant player into the ranks is quite important. But still a positive result, a positive performance, a step in the right direction, 100%. and hopefully against Newcastle we get to play a little bit more football in the opposition's half over a period of time and really show what Neto, Traore, Jose can do as a front three, and hopefully take advantage of a team who are looking a little bit shaky at the moment, who aren't necessarily the best in any part of the pitch, and make up for that 1-1 draw against us at Molineux. So hopefully we get another positive result, and I'll see you after that game, guys.